This has been an important issue in our city and outside our city for actually probably 2 or 3 years now. But this year we've had, there's probably not a day that goes by that someone on the city staff or related to it doesn't get a call or a question or an email about the bears. So our whole point of doing this tonight and offering this to you is one, of course, that it's educational and informative, so we can all hear the same thing at the same time. And then FWC, obviously, Florida Wildlife Commission, that is the organization that handles every call that we make and all the information that comes out. So we're very pleased to have at least three or four of them with us tonight, and Chipotle will introduce them at the time. The other thing I'd like to do is really thank all of our special guests who made the effort to come tonight and to be a participant in this, to listen, and they also get calls, and so I'm thinking this will be very helpful to all of them. So Senator Broxson, thank you so much for being here. Representative Andrade, thank you. Colton Wright, our commissioner, thank you so much for coming. So we will get started now, and I will turn that over to Chipotle.
I appreciate everybody being here, and I appreciate Dave Telesco and Catherine McCurdy being here to do the presentation. They actually snuck a couple extra people from FWC in here, so I appreciate them being here. As the mayor said, one of the main reasons is we have seen an increase in bear calls to the police department, and we get the question every time, what are you going to do about it? And we explain that the bears are protected by the state, and FWC is the overseer of the bears, and that's one of the main reasons that we will ask everybody to please call their hotline, because they need information. And the information comes from what your interaction is with the bear, what the bear does, how he acts, and everything. So instead of us trying to explain that, I figured the best way to do that was to get the experts here to talk to you and maybe answer some of your questions if they don't answer in their presentation. So they're going to do a 40-minute presentation. When they're done, we'll do some quick questions and answers. The city manager will walk around with a microphone and let you ask your questions and everything like that. So please, it'll be one at a time, no rush, and we'll get this taken care of. So hopefully questions are answers for everybody.
Okay, so first I want to thank everybody for coming, and especially our local government partners. This is something that FWC stresses, is that this is a cooperative effort. FWC can't do it alone, local government can't do it alone, and the residents and businesses can't do it alone. We all have to work together to address the issues. So thank you so much for hosting this. I really appreciate it. So like I said, my name is Dave Telesco. I'm the statewide bear coordinator for FWC, and I'm going to try to make it not squeak. And we're going to go through this presentation, but we're here to hear what's going on because we hear a portion of what happens for the folks who call us. We know there's a lot of people who don't call, and so we want to make sure we have a full picture of what's going on. And give you our perspective on what we're seeing, and you guys let us know what you're seeing and how we can work together to resolve it. So first things first, where are bears? Well, guess what? Gulf Breeze. But there's bears all around the state. They are not concentrated in one spot. The most bears we have is north of Orlando, but we have a lot of bears in South Florida, and also in Apalachicola. What you're seeing on this map is our range. So in the dark brown, it's called frequent because you will frequently see bears here. Common because you will commonly see bears here. Okay, so that's what we consider occupied range. In 2015, we did estimates of the population. And the first thing you'll say is, okay, the second slide, I'm not listening to anything else, because he says they only have 120 bears, okay? And I will tell you that in 2015, we estimated we had about 120 bears. We know there's more than that. It's an estimate. We don't do a census like the Population Bureau. But the fact that there's 50% almost of the historic range occupied bears with 21.5 million people, that's pretty impressive, but it also means that we have a responsibility to deal with it. But let me explain a little bit about why 120 is probably not too far off. When you guys see a bear, keep in mind that they have a home range. And we have radio collared these bears and figure out how big their range is, how far do they go in a year. That is 135 square miles. That's a male bear. So get that perspective in the tiny blip of Gulf breeze on this map. So when they visit someone's yard, they can totally be miles and miles and miles away the next day, or they can decide to visit the neighbor the next day. They move all around. But what's unique a little bit here is that it's a home range, not a territory. So as long as they're not in the same place at the same time, you have overlap. So one male might be there the next day, and a different male the next day after that. So they actually stack up on each other. And then our females are 34 square miles. Again, very large. This is some of the largest home ranges we have in the state. So they move around a lot to find all the food they need. And typically there's about 5 females for every 1 male in the area. So that gives you perspective as far as how many bears might be in the area. But keep in mind too, that when a bear walks into an urbanized area, it's going to light up those phones a lot more than if it walked into a rural area. There's just not enough people to make those calls. They are very intimidating. I will give them that. But they're almost vegetarian, okay? 73% of their diet is plants. Another 22% are bugs. So they pick up yellow jackets, they eat grubs, beetles, all sorts of stuff like that. Only 5% is animal. They are not active hunters because they don't have to be. Basically, they're smart enough to be lazy. So if a deer ran by, they'd be like, but if it fell dead in front of them, they would eat it. So that's what they're thinking. How can I get more calories for less work, right? And I mean, not that I've met anybody like that. So in the summertime, which is where we are now, they eat double what we do, so 5,000 calories a day. But in the fall, which is just around the corner, for us we consider fall September, they're going to try to eat 20,000 calories a day. So they're actually going to be active 18 hours a day trying to eat as much food as they can. And given that 73% of their diet are plants, it's not calorie rich. So it's really hard to get all those calories. So guess what? They're looking for easier calories and have them pick up an acorn that only has 4 calories each. So stuff that we don't realize is feeding bears is feeding bears. Now, unfortunately, we have a handful of people who actually think it's a good idea to hand feed bears. And we are investigating a few of those folks in Gulf Breeze. But that is a really, really bad idea. Not only for the person doing it, but for the bear. Okay? But most of the time, we're not trying to feed bears. We're trying to feed birds, or we're grilling out. And we have garbage, which, everybody's garbage. So we are not actually trying to feed bears, but bears see the neighborhood as a good place to get food and to get easy calories quickly. So statewide, this is what the kind of calls we get. We get 5,000 to 6,000 calls a year about bears. Almost a full third is specifically reporting there's a bear in my garbage. And I know none of us are like, garbage, yum. Bears, they love it because there's so many hidden calories in there. The pizza crust the kid didn't want to eat, that's packed with calories. And they can smell it over a mile away. So they don't have to, they can skip garbage cans if they don't like. And they can go to the next one. They don't even have to expend the effort. But general interaction, is 39%. What is general interaction? That's a bear in the yard, a bear's hanging around the area, a bear is up a tree. So take a look at the difference between statewide and what's going on in Gulf Breeze. Boom, 62% are general interaction. What you're seeing on WKRG picture right there, that's basically the most calls we're getting. Is a bear is breaking my privacy fence or walking along top of my privacy fence, or a bear is walking around during the daytime, things like that. So lower in the garbage, lower on property damage than statewide, but you're still talking about 1,700 calls since 2011. But let's look at what it looks like per year. So keep in mind, 2021 is only halfway through. So what it looks to me like is we're probably going to have another peak year like we did in 2018. It could be up to 300 calls coming out of Gulf Breeze. What you're seeing, this ebb and flow, is totally normal for bear activity. They have a food year where say, palmetto berries are really good, and they have a year that's not so good. Or oaks are in, oaks are out. So you're getting that ebb and flow. This is certainly going to be ebb, flow, high. So but that's what we're seeing right now. And again, you know, in 2011, did we have no bears? No, we did not have no bears. But we're seeing more bears, and people are more aware of them. And I think that's a key thing that I think is important, is that with the advent of Ring doorbell cameras and surveillance on your house and things like that, if a bear walked by at 3 a.m., you didn't know 5 years ago, but we know now. And with social media, not only do you know, all your neighbors know, because you just shared that video. So, you know, part of it is that we are more aware because we can actually see these animals moving through the neighborhood. So what is our role as the agency? You know, our mission is to manage fish and wildlife resources for the benefit of the species and people. And people. It is not just for the animals. We're here to educate people about bears, what to expect when you encounter, but how to avoid conflicts with them. We're not asking people to put up with conflicts. We have ways to deal with this so that you don't have conflicts, and that is important because I think a lot of people feel like, oh, well, you're on the bear side. We want you guys to understand that bears will be around, but we don't have to have conflicts with them. We've had bears in the Anglin Air Force Base area for decades. We're seeing them more. But we provide technical assistance over the phone, we visit neighborhoods, we have loaner equipment, we have water scarecrows and electric fencing that we can loan out. We scare bears with paintball guns and beanbag rounds. If we have a public safety risk, we trap and remove them. And we enforce our feeding rule. So what's the feeding rule? It is illegal to intentionally feed bears, okay? That's straight up. It's also a really bad idea. However, if it's unintentional, there's some caveats. Number one, are you unintentionally feeding bears and it's attracting a bear? Is it likely to create a nuisance? And have you been issued a notice of non-compliance by law enforcement? So I will tell you right now that if you live in Gulf Breeze and you have accessible bird seed or garbage or you leave pet food out overnight, you're checking the box for 1 and 2, but it's still not illegal until a law enforcement officer from Florida Fish and Wildlife gives you a notice that says, hey, the thing you're doing, that might be a violation of this rule. The next time, then it is. And so the idea is we don't want to, ambush anybody and thinking like, whoa, I didn't realize that. We want the person to know, hey, this is something we don't want to do, okay? And normally the notice is enough for people to be like, hey, yeah, I'm not going to do that anymore. But I want you to understand that you putting out your garbage can on its own is not illegal. It's only if you've been served this notice that it would be. So our policy is emphasis on personal responsibility. The reason is that having a bear in the yard is a symptom. The issue is there's something in the yard that it likes. Well, as beautiful as Gulf Breeze is, bears don't want to hang out with us. They don't want to be here, but they want to get this easy food. I mean, when I'm feeling lazy, I go through the drive-thru. That's what the bears are doing. They're hitting neighborhoods to get the easy food. Most of our calls are resolved with technical assistance over the phone. Because you're saying, hey, there's a bear getting my bird seed. Okay, well, here's how you can still feed birds, but not attract bears. So there's that. A lot of folks are like, okay, well, but why aren't you coming to get it? If I came and got every bear, and even if I came and got every bear and put it down, there's another bear waiting to get that food source. So that food source is still there. Here's the other thing. If a bear's coming, raccoons, possums, rats, everything else is probably like excellent, but they're not big and scary, so they're not creating much of a hubbub. When you look at all of the data from what we do and our policies, only 2% result in a trapping effort. That's not us restricting, that's us saying, how many times the 5,000 calls we get is a bear doing something that is a public safety risk? It's 2%. So we kill about 40 bears a year on average of the 4,000 bears that we estimated in 2015. So we could have as many as 6,000 if you look at some of the models. So what we advise is stash the trash, scare the bear. So what have we done in Gulf Breeze? So again, we know that there are more than 168 issues that have happened, but of what people have called us, 160 people have called us between January 1st and July 30th of this year. We've done door-to-door canvassing, we're knocking people's doors, we put literature out in 6 different neighborhoods. We cooperated with Where TV and did a kind of a news story like saying, hey, this is coming, this is happening, they're getting more active. Lots of site visits. And when I talk about a site visit, it is, we talk on the phone, what you're describing to me, I don't really understand why a bear would be there, so we're gonna come out and look and see what's going on. Sometimes it's nothing to do with your yard, it's 2 houses over, there's something going on over there. So that's what a site visit is. And then we provide over 3,000 brochures and door hangers to the police to be able to offer for you guys. We've also offered funding. So for Santa Rosa County and all I got to see over $100,000 to provide hardware to secure the lids on regular cans, dumpsters, and sheds. And I will say this, that Holly by the Sea got a really good deal on their hardware, and so they actually secured a lot of school and library and public facility dumpsters with their share. So I do want to give them credit for that. So what is it that we expect from folks, residents, businesses? Learn about bears and know how to avoid conflicts. Know what is it that, why is a bear coming to my yard? I don't understand. How to secure these different items, and each one sometimes a little different how to secure it than another. And this is the big ask that people always are like, you've got to be kidding me. Scare the bear. And you're like, there's no way that I am going to try to scare that ginormous thing. Okay, and I will explain this. But report conflicts. And I'll go into this a little bit, but when I say report conflicts, to us. Because number one, if you call the police, they're gonna say, call FWC. But number two, it gives us a better feel of what's actually going on. If I only get one call, but there's 6 different incidences, I know about what happened at that one call. But if I have a full picture, I can make a better response and figure out how, what can we do to resolve this. Commercial garbage, fairly simple to secure. Those plastic lids, they're actually reinforced with a big metal H inside. So you can get the reinforced lids and a lock bar, boom, you got it. Or you go classic, as I like to refer to it, dumpsters, with metal lids and a clip on the side. Because yes, bears will stand up, open it, go in, and they won't close after themselves, they just open. Now residential is harder because it's smaller and it's harder to secure. So what we ask folks is, instead of taking out the night before, that means the bears have all night when our activity levels drop, and now they can kind of egg each other on. You go get that garbage. You get that garbage. So that's all night they can kind of figure out, do I want to go and get that garbage? But if you put it out the morning of, so say it's kept in a garage or a sturdy shed until the morning of, less activity, less chance for those bears to get into it. The hardware that I refer to is putting metal gate hasps on the side of a normal commercial can. Now, this does not work on every can. If you go to Ace Hardware and get like a rubberneck, that's gonna collapse. It's gotta be like a sturdy can, and the way we test is you put it on the ground and you sit on it. If it collapses, you can't do that. But if it doesn't collapse, putting those hasps on, it's not bear proof, but it keeps most bears out. The other thing you can do is build a caddy on the edge of your property, again, if Waste Services is willing to do it, because again, we've got to say no bears, but yes to the garbage can. So I can make it bear resistant, but now that the garbage can can get it, so that's not going to work. But then you also have the be-all, end-all is a commercially manufactured can that has actually been tested by captive grizzly bears who are experts at breaking into things. So Yeti coolers, bearskin can, they're all tested in one place in Montana. There's 5 captive grizzly bears. And if it can withstand 60 minutes of contact, now they call it bear proof. There's no such thing. But we call it bear resistant. So you can get a bear resistant can. This has been happening lately a lot, okay? More than normal in Gulf Breeze. We have backyard chickens and the bears are getting into them and eating them. Now, what a coop might keep a fox out, a coop is not going to keep a bear out. But I will tell you that electric fencing will keep all of the above out. Because just like us, everyone loves chicken, including foxes, raccoons, the list goes on and on. So electric fencing is very effective, not only for chickens, but for bee yards, for anything. If you have a blueberry bush, anything that is going to respect 10,000 volts. You only touch a fence once, and then you're going to touch it again. I know that, for sure. But other things, again, bird seed. It's okay to feed birds. Everyone likes to feed birds. A lot of people like to feed birds. But the idea is don't make it accessible so you can take it at night or hang it 10 feet off the ground. Some other way that the bears can get the full amount. If it's a little spilled seed, it's not worth their effort to hang around for that. But take a look at that picture on the bottom. If you're feeding outdoor cats, you're feeding lots of other things. So what I would say is if you want to do that, put it out. The cats will learn very quickly. You put it out for an hour or two, and then you take it back. And they'll be like, okay, it's dinner time. I need to be here between 5 and 6, or I'm not going to have any food at all. But take in the bowl, because the bowl has a scent too. So I'm not saying don't do it. And again, I think this goes for all of this. We're not suggesting that all of a sudden your whole lives have to change. We're saying a few tweaks can mean that the bear has no interest in hanging out in your yard. Obviously, grilling is fun. Clean the grill, not fun. But it's way better if you clean it than if a bear cleans it. Dogs. Bears and dogs do not like each other. They've never liked each other, even when the dog was a wolf, okay? So what we suggest is when you're walking your dog, a non-retractable leash, you have more control. If it's a small dog, as you all know have small dogs, they don't know they're small dogs, okay? They actually give more problems than bigger dogs. Because the little dogs are challenging that bear, they're all over it. If you see a bear down the street, you got your little dog, pick it up and maybe go a different route, okay? So that they don't even see each other. But I will say this, regardless if it's little dog, big dog, and this is, again, another hard ask, do not physically try to intervene. Because here's the thing, it's not just, I have a dog, I love my dog, but it's not just bad for you, it's bad for your dog. Because if your dog's trying to defend itself, it can concentrate on itself. But if you're involved, now it's going to try to defend you and itself. And it's going to get more aggressive if it's trying to defend you. So do not physically try to intervene. We tell people carry an air horn. I know the city's been passing those out. I know a lot of people are like, what the heck? Bears do not like weird loud noises. So that is very effective. Bear spray, very effective. If you're at your house, shoot them with a hose. But do not try to physically separate a bear and a dog. We've had that happen more time than you would imagine, and people can get hurt. We do not want that. Just be aware when you're walking. If you're aware, now a lot of folks, they walk with earbuds and they have their head down and they're just kind of cruising along. Maybe one earbud. so that you're aware of what's going on. Again, it's good to have the air horn or a whistle or something that would be a little bit weird for a bear. Stay together. Walk in twos instead of ones. Keep kids in sight. If you see a bear and you're like, this is awesome. This is awesome. As soon as it starts reacting to you, you've now gone too close. Okay, so we don't want to. That's your element of like, yeah, that's a little bit too close. So this sign is from Great Smokies National Park, Great Smoky Mountains National Park. 50 yards is basically like that's close enough. So what are you supposed to do? Okay, I know that my elementary school teacher led me wrong. She told me that if you see a bear, play dead. She didn't tell me what species. So we have 40 states that have black bears. We have 5 states that have brown bears. You're supposed to play dead for brown bears. So thanks a lot, okay? So black bears do not want to play dead because they eat things that play dead. If a possum turns over and plays dead, they're like, excellent, okay? So you do not want to play dead for a black bear. Here's another thing. Everyone, when they see danger, is fight or flight, you're thinking run. Don't run. Number one, believe it or not, as dopey as they seem, they can actually sprint 35 miles an hour. Okay, and I think Usain Bolt goes 27, so none of us are going to be doing that. But the other thing is, just like a dog, you might instinct, like a chase instinct. You don't want that. You don't want them to be like, I wasn't interested to start running. We don't want that. Let's say it's in your yard and you're gardening. You see the bear, you go up to the porch, you stay in the doorway, and this is the part that we're talking about, is you scare the bear. Yell at it, wave your arms, make some noise. And here's an example of what not to do. Go away, bear. Go. Get out of here, bear. That's how you scare a bear. You show them you mean it, okay? Body language, that's how you do it. Now, you can also let other things scare the bear for you. This thing in the middle, that's called a water scarecrow. You stick that in the ground and turn the water pressure on, and it's got an infrared beam. Anything that crosses in front of that is going to get a super soaker to the face. Okay, so this works on bears, deer, the mailman, whatever you point it at, it'll work. The item in the upper right, that's the same idea, but it goes off like a car alarm and flashing lights. Neighbors, not a big fan of that, but it does do that. But again, air horn. And I will say this, you're thinking, slingshot, paintball gun, what are you talking about? If it's not a female and they have a clear escape route and they're not reacting to you yelling at them, yes, we absolutely encourage you to put some force behind it. They are instinctually afraid, and if you can play that up, that's the best you can do. And if you're ever really bored and wondering, are bears afraid? Go on YouTube and look up house cats chasing black bears. It happens a lot. They'll tree them, believe it or not. It's about attitude, and as you guys have cat owners, there's a whole lot of attitude packed in a tiny little bundle. But again, motion alarms, that thing on the bottom, that's bear spray. Now, with bear spray, it sort of looks like a fire extinguisher. And that's good, because that lets you know what does it do. It's not like pepper spray, like personal defense, where it comes out in a stream, you have to be fairly close. This thing comes in a cloud 30 feet away. So the bear would actually have to walk through that cloud to get to you. It's actually way more effective than if you had a firearm. Because the bear has to walk through a 2-foot wide radius to get to you. So very, very effective. So here is the traffic light scenario. So green's okay, yellow's I'm not so sure, red, that's not good. So normal behavior. The bear is far away, it's easily scared off, and again, in a real scaring off attempt, it's feeding on natural foods. A lot of what we're getting calls about is people are like, I see the bear, it's in my yard, it's in the daytime. It's not like a raccoon. Them being around in the daytime doesn't trigger anything different. Don't approach it, please don't feed it. If it's concerning, we're talking about it's not scared away. You're banging pots and pans, you're yelling, you're air horning, and it's just like, whatever. Eating non-natural foods. and it's actually being protective. Like, this is my garbage can, not your garbage can. And then we hit the red, okay? Approaching a person or actively, like it sees you and it walks up to you like, hey, I see that person and I want to approach that. Approaching a pet. When I say lingering near human use areas, it's lingering in Gulf Breeze, but is it lingering in your yard like days and days and days? That's different than walking through. Obviously, some of these other are pretty obvious. If it's coming in your house, physically make contact with people, eating food, garbage, pet food, birdseed when you're present. Literally, you're like putting the garbage out, and the bear's like, you're a half hour late. Okay, that's not okay. And note, the regional office or our hotline. Now, the hotline is for illegal things or emergencies, because they're literally dispatching someone for a boating accident. But if it's this red stuff, that is something that we want to know, if that is something that we need to take care of. Now, when I say don't call the police, if it's an emergency, you still call 911, okay? But any of these things, you can call our 188 number. If they actually make contact with you, like I said, do not run, do not play dead. Believe it or not, you fight back. So black bear, fight back. Brown bear, lay down. It's like that. Okay, now it is super, super rare. Since we've kept records since the 1970s, we only are aware of 13 people who've received moderate to serious injuries from a bear in Florida. And almost all of these are the bear was defending a cub, or a dog was involved, or something that was kind of there. About 40% of these, people intentionally interacted with it. Now, they weren't trying to get hurt, but they were maybe hand feeding rotisserie chicken. Okay, things that you're like, not a good idea. So what is the role of local government? Well, the biggest role is teaming up like tonight. If we try to do this on our own, this wouldn't be successful. But having all these folks together willing to host this, that's how we work together on this. We have in the past trained Gulf Breeze PD on how to respond to bears, and we're going to do another training here coming up. But one thing that is not super obvious is, usually cities and counties, they have waste service contracts. This is something we ask them to remember. When you're going to renew that, make sure that the waste service company is okay with people adding in clips on their cans, or make sure they're okay with giving you guys or allowing you guys to lease bear system cans. But then the other thing is called an ordinance. Ordinances are not popular because ordinance is a rule or a law, okay? Basically saying, hey, if you live in a bear zone, you need to keep your garbage secure. Now, you can do it a lot of different ways. But you have 5 counties in Florida that have some form of an ordinance. We call it Bear-Wise Ordinance. But Fort Walton Beach, just in the next county over, Hurlburt Field, and then you got some in Central Florida. So what does that look like? Well, Hurlburt is what we actually certify as Bear-Wise. It's like a certification. The regional 15 state areas in Southeast have this certification thing. And we recognize Hurlburt as a Bear-Wise community. They keep all garbage secure. When people come on base, they have orientation to tell them, hey, there's bears here, this is what you do about it. We train security forces. In 2 years, they dropped 70% of their complex just by doing that. So it's not just, I'm going to secure my trash. It's the full picture of understanding. So this is what we call the West Panhandle Bear Management Unit. And you can see, you can see that it's basically covered up with sightings. And these are recent sightings up to July 31st. And you can actually pick out Gulf Breeze and where the naval live oaks is, because there's no calls from there. So take a look at this area here. This is the Santa Rosa County Bear-Wise Safety Ordinance area. So it's literally a code that says, hey, you need to keep your trash secure and keep people safe. The idea is that it creates a community-wide effect. The same thing as if I'm in a flood zone. If I'm in a flood zone, there's certain things I should do. If I'm in a bear zone, there's certain things I should do, okay? And it's not about, or you're in trouble. It's about the messaging that is not just an FWC message, it's the county message, because the county's saying, I'm here to help you be safe, and that's one way I can do that. But you can see it is completely lit up with calls. Now, these are the 168 calls that I was talking about, and you'll see there isn't a place in Gulf Breeze that is bear-free. And I would guess that there's at least double, if not more, of actual interaction with bears versus people who call us. But I will say that Gulf Breeze has a very unique advantage than any other place I can think of that have bears. 3 sides of water. If you guys don't provide food for bears, that's a lot of walking all the way to the tip to get nothing. So if there's really not much food, they really don't have a reason to hang out here because they keep walking, they go in the Gulf. Yes, they can swim, but they don't necessarily want to do it for a reason. So some of the questions that we get from the folks who call us, I think this is the most popular one, is why you just move them? I mean, right? Well, 20, 30 years ago, that's what we would do. And that's what most states did. The issue now is we've got 21.5 million people in Florida, and where bears are, there's no empty spot. So you move a bear and they're like, this is my spot? No. The other thing is we did a study, we collared them and saw what they did once we moved them. 70% do not stay. They either come right back or they go somewhere else. Another 50% actually repeat whatever they were doing in the first place. So they were bothering Mrs. Jones' birdseed, and now they're bothering Mrs. Smith's birdseed. So we're actually moving a problem. And as I said before, even if I were to catch that bear and move it and it didn't come back, there's another bear waiting to get in there. So that's why that's not our first go, because it is not very effective to get them to not come back and another bear is waiting. Why don't we just collar the bears, and that way you can tell me, is the bear here? Like, when is the bear around? I wish I could tell you that we are bear masters, and that any time I put a trap out, I whisper to the bears and they come in. It's about a 50% capture success, okay? So that means that even if we did try this, only half of the bears would be wearing collars. The other thing is, that's a pretty big collar. And we don't put things on animals for wildlife research that's going to make them kind of spin around in a circle. So the animal's got to be 100 pounds or more. So now there's a whole bunch of bears that we may have caught that we can't collar. This is not to mention the collars are $3,000 each. My message is, we want you to act the same whether there's a bear in your yard right now or a bear 3 blocks away. It's the same thing. It's not going to help you to know there's a bear in your yard now versus there could be a bear in your yard next week. So even though we can't do it, it also is not going to be an effective way to do it. Where did all these things come from? I've lived here my whole life, I've never had issues, and now all of a sudden I do. And you saw that the call thing, it went from 12 to 312 in 2011 to 300 in 2018. What happened? Well, bears are not like rabbits. They don't have multiple litters and all of a sudden you got bears everywhere. It takes them a long time. But think about, if you've lived here long enough, think about the growth in this area. People, our population has grown, the bear population has grown, but also where we are. Expansion of the range includes bear range expansion. And I talked about social media, I talked about Ring doorbells, so we're even more aware because we share with each other. And again, it is way easier to earn a living in a neighborhood than it is to earn a living in the woods. Why can't we feed the bears? There's so many things about that picture, but I'm just not going to go there. But, again, so the thing about feeding bears is a wild animal is naturally afraid of people. But you can't domesticate an animal in a generation. So now what you've done is reduce that animal's natural fear of people. So he might be willing to walk up to you. But guess what? He might be willing to walk up to your neighbor too, who's not feeding. He might be willing to walk up to somebody else. And you're letting it know it's okay to be really close to me. That is really dangerous. Not only is it gonna increase bears hanging around people and breaking fences and property damage? We know it's an increased risk to public safety. When bears are hand-fed, that is an increased risk. We say if a fed bear is a dead bear, and that's the truth. If we find out that that bear is getting hand-fed, and we hear it's being food, we call it food conditioned or habituated, we will catch it and we will kill it. And I said we kill 40 bears a year. And believe me, none of my biologists nor I like doing that, but that's our responsibility. There is no place that I can put a wild bear that's an adult, that's used to roaming 130 square miles, even into the nicest zoo, is tiny. And it is not a pretty picture. They hurt themselves, they try to hurt the keeper, they zap themselves, and it's horrible. So for the most humane thing is we put them down. Not to mention, by the way, it's illegal. Why should we call FWC? We want to know what's going on. You look at this picture, I guarantee you there are other calls going on in these areas. But if we see a cluster, that means that we can actually go out and talk door to door what's going on. What is it about that neighborhood or the neighborhood to the north that's really being attractive to bears? Or are we just not getting calls from that neighborhood? But it helps us know what's going on. Put the pieces together for us so we understand bear activity. What we want to do is prevent the problem escalating to the point where it becomes a risk. Once it's become a risk, there's no turning back, and we have to catch it and try to put it down. We make decisions based on data, and we have a policy that we follow to decide when is it a risk and when is it not. Allow the police to handle emergencies and have us handle talking about bears and how to avoid conflicts. I was a little surprised about this one. Why don't we track social media? We are not Big Brother. I'm sure there are people who think we are. We're not. Even if we want to be Big Brother, there are so many different social media platforms and so many different venues. It would be really hard for us to track and look into each time something's going on with social media. And for those who are familiar with social media, you might be familiar with this sort of thing about people might post stuff that they wouldn't necessarily say in person. So in that case, we can chase them on rabbit holes. So we want to rely on people to talk to us, not only because we get more accurate information and real-time information, but then we can have a dialogue and talk about it. And when they tell us something, we might ask questions that they didn't think to tell us. Oh yeah, it was doing this too. And first-hand reports really help. A lot of people say, well, didn't you see the chicken got killed on social media next door app? No, I did not. So then we have to try to track down the owner to find out what really happened. So it becomes this whole spinning process. So I will tell you right now that even if every single person here, every single person in Gulf Breeze, all of a sudden knew about bears, knew how to avoid conflicts with them, it doesn't mean you're not going to ever see a bear again. I can't tell you that, but I can tell you that we can get them to be more wild, which means less afraid, increase their fear of us, which means less conflicts. Because we've always had bears in this peninsula, we're gonna have bears, but we can avoid conflicts if we can work through that. So these are the numbers that I want you guys to remember. And again, I'm happy to answer questions, and that's where we're here for tonight. So, thank you.